Hey, welcome back to Elephant Dung. I just wanted to share with you, I am hanging out at the Outer Banks and I was kind of bored yesterday. There's not a lot going on here. It's March and there aren't that many people down here. So I was surfing YouTube videos and I had a thought that there was a woman back in 2008 who had done a video or a TED Talk about herself experiencing a stroke. And I was thinking about sort of blogging through my own spiritual awakening and how odd it was to be looking at my own ego self and myself processing essentially a spiritual awakening. And I was like, well, this woman did it when she was having a stroke. So I went to check out her video, and it turned out to be one of the most amazing spiritual teachings I have encountered in a really long time. So I hope you guys will go check it out. It was called A Stroke of Insight, and her name is Dr. Jill Taylor. She was a Harvard fellow at the time doing brain research. She's a neuroanatomist, which means she studies the anatomy of the brain. And she gives her TED Talk referencing the two hemispheres of the brain and the fact that they aren't actually connected for the majority of the gray matter. You've got the left hemisphere, which processes all of our sense of I, our ego identity, essentially, our memories, our linear problem solving, the future and the past. And all of the kind of complex learned thought of who I, Jessica, am comes in the left hemisphere. And then she talks about the right hemisphere as being this sort of sense of we and the consciousness of energy and every sense of processing in terms of our experiences in the world, our sensory input, our motor input, that side of the brain learns by doing, it learns by experiencing. And it's sort of this global we sense. And she talks about the right hemisphere as connecting all of us as a spiritual family, essentially. And she talks about that consciousness as just so vast and expansive. And, people think of that as the artistic side, but she's really referencing it as so much more than that. It's just, basically our connection to awareness, although she doesn't actually say that. But in watching her video, it became so clear to me that what we are doing as spiritual seekers and as people who are awakening is simply shifting our consciousness or our center of the I self from the left hemisphere to the right, which means that you aren't actually losing your ego. I personally have been going through kind of a sense of ego loss, kind of a sense of I am no longer a wife, I am no longer needed as a mother, I am no longer a daughter, my parents are gone. And I've sort of been grieving this strange sense of ego loss as I've been trying to hold on to this sense of the I that I am as, eternal awareness and consciousness. And, this kind of enlightenment experience is like over here on the right side. And I've been in an odd way, sad about what I was losing in my personal Jessica identity, because I like Jessica. I mean, I've had fun here for 60 years. So I'm kind of looking at this now, after watching Dr. Taylor's thought, it's so clear to me that you aren't losing anything. The ego isn't going anywhere. What you're doing is essentially shifting from the left side of your hemisphere, left brain hemisphere identity to a right brain hemisphere identity. And the two are connected by the corpus callosum. They do communicate with each other. So if you can come over here to the right hemisphere and rest in the I am, as in the global consciousness, the everything, the vast, kind of nirvana, or what Dr. Taylor refers to as a la-la land, you can sit over there and be totally fine and be totally whole, and you aren't missing anything. You haven't left anything behind. Your left hemisphere is still over here, totally intact, holding your ego, holding everything that you are. You're just resting on the right side of your brain. And whenever you need to, you can drop down across the corpus callosum and come back up in the left side, or just jump over and get any information about yourself that you want. Eckhart Tolle talks about, if you're walking around awakened or enlightened and somebody asks you, what do? You don't say, oh, I just sit in enlightenment. You say, I serve as a doctor, or I work as an accountant. It's not your identity but it is the role that your form plays. And I think in listening to Dr. Taylor talk about her stroke and talk about the functions of the brain, all of a sudden it just makes absolute perfect sense to me how you are whole in this being, including both sides of the brain, including the connections, including your form. But what you have to do, or all you can do, or the best you can do maybe, is to rest your sense of I, the resting mind, in the right hemisphere where there is peace and there is oneness and there is a global connection, to God, to the universe, to consciousness, to oneness, to energy. And just basically sit over there as your sense of I that I am until you're needed on the other side, when you need processing, when you need a past and a future, when you need to problem solve. When your car breaks down and you're stranded on the side of the road, you need to jump into your left hemisphere. That's the piece that's going to say, hey, call AAA, get a tow truck, get out the jack, do what you need to do. That's left hemisphere, and that's amazing. That's how form functions. It doesn't go anywhere. You're not trying to get rid of it. You don't kill your ego. You rest it over there until you need it. And then you just jump back and pick it up and you perform those functions. And whenever you're done with that and the problem's gone away and you've done whatever you needed to do, with brain function and brain processing, with conversation and language, all of that is in your left hemisphere. So you work over there for a while, and when that job is done, you simply shift back and rest on the right hemisphere. You rest in the oneness, you rest in the whole, you rest in awareness of everything that you are and the miracle of form. And you just kind of hang out over there. And I don't know why this is so incredibly exciting to me, but I think I'm a very logical person. I'm a science-based person. I have a nursing background. So having her explain it in terms of the actual brain itself, seeing the two hemispheres sitting together, I guess they kind of meet in the, at the base, and recognizing that they so easily communicate. You can easily switch between the two. But where you rest your identity doesn't have to be a left hemisphere function. You can rest in the right and jump back anytime you need to. The left hemisphere it's in your head. It's not going anywhere. And I think that was so calming to me and so incredibly enlightened to recognize it that way. It suddenly relieved all of my sense of ego loss. It relieved any thought that I'm going to suddenly kill off my ego and no longer be Jessica. I kind of, in a strange way, was very much afraid of enlightenment and that I wouldn't function as myself. I didn't want to lose my children. I didn't want to lose, I don't know, the ability to function in the world. And I watched enlightened people, masters talk about it. And, you see Ram Dass and you see Eckhart Tolle and you see, all of the people, Rupert Spira, and there's countless Moji and all of these people out there, and they function. But I couldn't figure out how. I couldn't figure out where you hold that ego self. And somehow having, Dr. Taylor's kind of model of the brain, it just suddenly let me see it in such a clear mental imagery of resting on the right, coming down through the corpus callosum, back to the left to function anytime I needed to be Jessica. Jessica is still there. And then just kind of going back to rest, back in the oneness of everything that is naturally in you. It just was so incredibly, I don't know, it was a really enlightening moment to me. I just went, oh my God, that's it. That's what I've been struggling to get. So I hope that this helps somebody. If you're out there struggling, feeling like you're losing yourself or you're going to kill off your ego, you're not going to kill ego. You can't live without ego. Ego is what helps the body function. It tells you you're hungry. It tells you you're tired. You can't get rid of your ego. And people think, oh, well, I'll make peace with my ego. And I don't even think it's that. I think you let it just be. And you don't do anything to it. You just let it be in the left hemisphere where it belongs, I guess. And the other really interesting piece about this is that, there's a lot of talk in the spiritual realm about more and more people being born closer to the veil. Like, I've heard that a lot, that there's so many people awakening, and there's so many people who are having these sudden spontaneous Kundalini awakenings, or they're suddenly, just, I don't know, like it seems like the energy of the planet is speeding up, and more people are awakening, and it's undeniably becoming more unstable and more insane in our political realm and our wars and everything that's going on. We're developing these two sides. And I couldn't kind of figure out why spiritual awakening was becoming more and more common, and why more and more people are called to the energy arts and called into this, essentially the right hemisphere. But if you think about it as a brain function, and you are naturally born with both, it kind of makes sense that the human species could evolve as the world becomes more unstable, that mankind would evolve to be more right hemisphere located, or closer to it. More of your right hemisphere, more of your energy, more of our natural connection to God, to awareness, to the universal energy, would kind of come into being as a more dominant part of our kind of innate biology. I mean, even the coronavirus mutated to not kill the host. If you kill your host, you don't get very far. And what if we as a species are evolving, and we become too violent, we become too angry, we become too much dominated in our scientific left hemisphere, and maybe we as a species are actually evolving to not kill the host. We don't want to kill the planet. That doesn't do anything for us. So it could be that just simply biologically, we are evolving to kind of bring forward more of our right hemisphere, and to be kind of closer to that veil, to be closer to utilizing both, to connecting to both, or understanding that this whole right hemisphere of energy processing has not been utilized, for a really long time over here. I don't even know how many millennia, but it was just a really interesting thought. So I totally encourage you to go check out Dr. Taylor's TED Talk. It's called A Stroke of Insight. She is just such an amazing person. Her recovery was amazing. And I can't believe I had heard her in 2008 when she first did that TED Talk. And I guess I just wasn't ready to hear her. And so it was absolutely fascinating to go listen to it again. And I am so grateful for her. Dr. Taylor, thank you. And anybody else out there, I hope that this is helpful. And I hope that you will continue to follow along. I want Elephant Dung to become a community of like-minded people, of people who are awakening. I think there is such a movement towards awakening, and I think we need support and we need each other. So I'm grateful that you're here. Just stay tuned. Thanks.